The battlefield of ashes. The battlefield was silent, save for the crackle of dying fires. Broken banners lay half-buried in the mud, their colors scorched black by flame. Captain Elias Kane moved cautiously among the wreckage, the air thick with smoke and the metallic sting of blood. He was no victor here, only a stranded human caught in a war that was never his. Something glimmered among the bodies. Half hidden beneath a mound of ash, a sword pulsed faintly with red light. Its blade was etched with runes that seemed to breathe, alive with heat. Elias crouched, brushing dirt away, and fell an odd pull. It looked ancient, ceremonial, far too important to lie forgotten in the dust. He reached down and gripped the hilt. Pain seared his palm instantly, as if the steel were made of fire. He hissed, but did not let go. Instead, he tightened his grip and dragged it free. The sword thrummed in his hand like a living thing, eager, hungry. Elias straightened, scanning the ruins of the battlefield. He didn't know whose it was, but instinct told him it mattered. Someone would come searching for this weapon. He intended to return it, though he had no idea of the terror that choice would bring. The blade's rejection. Elias found the remnants of a camp nestled against a ridge of black stone. Fires still burned low in iron braziers, their light falling over armored figures. They were tall, broad-shouldered, and wrapped in cloaks that shimmered like molten copper. Their leader stood at the center, a woman with hair like burning embers, her gaze sharp and unyielding. She was Lady Sarathiel, commander of the Flameborne. Elias didn't know her name yet, only that the others obeyed her without question. When he stepped forward with the sword across his palms, silence swept the camp. Dozens of eyes fixed on the weapon. Fear, not curiosity, shone in their faces. "I believe this is yours," Elias said simply, extending the blade. Sarathiel's expression flickered between shock and suspicion. "That relic is not for your hands. Off-worlder." The moment Elias shifted the hilt toward her, the sword blazed white-hot. Searing pain coursed through his palm, blistering skin. He staggered, refusing to cry out. His jaw locked, and he forced himself to hold steady. The smell of burned flesh curled into the night air. Gasps erupted. Warriors stumbled back, dropping their weapons. Some shouted words in their tongue, others made signs of warding. Sarathiel herself froze, her composure cracking. No outsider should have survived touching the blade. Her people had seen warriors of noble blood turn to ash for daring less. Yet here stood a scarred human, still breathing, still holding it. Fear rippled through the Flameborne camp like a living storm. Whispers spread. The sword chose him, the hand of ash. Elias, confused and in pain, only tightened his grip. He had meant to return a weapon. Instead, he had walked in a prophecy, the fear of the Flameborne. The camp had become a cage of silence. Every warrior who moments before stood proud now recoiled from Elias, as though he carried death itself. Their weapons lay scattered on the ground, abandoned in their rush to distance themselves. The firelight flickered across their faces, wide-eyed and pale with dread. Lady Sarathiel forced herself forward, though her steps were measured, cautious. Her warriors whispered in their tongue, a single phrase repeated again and again, "Hand of Ash." She silenced them with a raised palm, but their fear lingered like smoke. Elias looked between them, bewildered. His palm throbbed with searing pain where the blade had burned him, skin blistered and blackened. Yet still he held the weapon. He could not understand why his endurance drew such terror. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice rough. "I only meant to give it back." Sarathiel studied him with a gaze sharp as a blade. Her people had guarded the sword for centuries, yet not one of them had ever truly borne it. The legends spoke of a stranger, an exile from the stars, who would endure the flame where all others failed. She had dismissed it as a tale meant to frighten children. But the evidence stood before her. Elias felt their eyes on him, not with respect, but withal laced with dread. He saw how the strongest among them stepped back when he moved. He realized then, it wasn't only the weapon that unsettled them. It was him. Sarathiel's voice was low when she finally spoke. "The sword does not belong to you, human. Yet it has not destroyed you. That alone is enough to shake the faith of my warriors." Her words carried no triumph, only unease. Trial by fire. The next morning, Elias was led into the mountains. Warriors flanked him, their armor glowing faintly with heat, though none dared walk too close. Lady Sarathiel walked ahead in silence, guiding him into a cavern where the air shimmered with molten light. Lava veins pulsed through the stone, filling the chamber with a furnace's breath. At the center lay a dais of black rock. Upon it rested the sword, waiting, its runes dim but alive, as though it sensed what was to come. "This is the trial of the flame," Sarathiel said. "Only those chosen may grasp the blade and leave this chamber alive. Many have tried. All have failed." Elias glanced at his burned palm, then at the circle of watching eyes. He wanted nothing of trials, nothing of prophecy. Yet he understood that refusal was not an option. He stepped forward. The heat thickened, pressing against his chest. Sweat dripped into his eyes, but he did not falter. When his hand closed around the hilt, fire ripped through his flesh. His knees buckled, but he refused to release it. The runes flared, first red, then white, then gold. The chamber shook with a low rumble. Gasps broke from the onlookers as the sword ignited fully for the first time in living memory. A river of flame coiled along its length, bright enough to blind. Elias staggered upright, gripping the weapon despite the pain burning through every nerve. His jaw clenched, his voice low and defiant. "You want me to prove myself? Then watch." The warriors fell back, some bowing, some trembling. Even Sarathiel lowered her head. The trial was meant to kill him. Instead, the blade had awakened. Whispers of rebellion. That night, the Flameborne camp was split by whispers. Some spoke in hushed reverence, claiming the prophecy had been fulfilled, that the hand of Ash had come at last. Others muttered in anger, unwilling to believe their sacred weapon had chosen an outsider, a human of all things. Elias sat apart, the sword laid across his lap. His palm throbbed with a constant ache, bandaged hastily by Sarathiel's healers. Each time he touched the blade, visions struck him. Flashes of burning skies, titanic battles, a darkness that consumed entire worlds. The sword carried memory or warning, and each image left him shaken. Sarathiel approached quietly, her armor dim in the firelight. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. The blade was forged in the heart of a dying star. It was meant to choose one willing to suffer, to bleed for more than himself. That is why my people fear it. They worship its fire, but none have endured it. Elias shook his head. "I never asked for this. I only wanted to give it back." Her expression softened, though only slightly. Destiny rarely asked permission. Beyond the firelight, not all shared her calm. A circle of warriors whispered with venom in their eyes. They called Elias a thief, a usurper who had bewitched the blade. Their hands tightened around hidden knives. The camp was quiet on the surface, but Elias could feel it, fear and awe twisting into rebellion. The fire had not united them. It had divided them, and somewhere in that division, betrayal was already being planned. Betrayal in the shadows. The attack came deep in the night. The campfires had burned low, and Elias slept in a tent at the edge of the encampment, the sword propped beside him. Shadows moved at the flap, silent, purposeful. The first blade came down toward his throat. Elias jolted awake, instincts honed by years of soldiering kicking in. His hand closed around the sword's hilt. Fire surged instantly, flooding the tent with searing light. The assassin screamed as the weapon's flame lashed outward, consuming him in a heartbeat. Two more rushed in. Elias swung clumsily, not with skill but with desperation. The sword's fire obeyed, erupting in arcs that scorched the ground and sent the attackers reeling back. Their armor melted where the flames touched. One fled, shrieking into the night. The other collapsed in smoldering ruin. The camp awoke in chaos. Warriors spilled into the clearing, some with weapons drawn, others frozen in horror. They saw Elias standing there, face grim, hand burned black, yet still gripping the weapon. Flames licked harmlessly around him, as though the sword refused to harm its chosen bearer. Half the camp dropped to their knees, voices rising in fearful prayer. The rest turned away, shaken and unwilling to accept what they had witnessed. Sarathiel pushed through the crowd, her eyes narrowing at the slain rebels. She met Elias's gaze and saw no triumph there, only exhaustion. "I didn't ask for this," he rasped. "But if I carry it, then I'll use it to protect, not destroy." Her warriors heard his vow, and though many still trembled, some found themselves believing. For the first time, Elias's defiance had planted something stronger than fear. Hope. The enemy returns. Dawn broke over the ridge with the sound of war drums. The rival Dominion had seen the Flameborne's fractured state and marched to finish them. Their army poured across the valley, rank upon rank of armored soldiers, banners snapping in the wind. The Flameborne scrambled to form ranks. Fear still gnawed at them after the night's betrayal. Many doubted they could withstand another battle. Sarathiel knew hesitation meant death. She raised her voice above the din. "Stand, warriors of flame. We are not broken yet." But it was Elias who stepped forward, the sword blazing in his hand. The camp fell silent as he lifted the weapon high. Its fire roared like a living storm, reflecting in hundreds of eyes. He looked nothing like a conqueror, burned, weary, scarred, but he stood unyielding. "I'll fight," Elias said. "Not for prophecy, not for thrones. For survival." Something shifted. Warriors who had once recoiled now straightened, gripping their spears with renewed resolve. Sarathiel, watching him, felt the tide of fear bend toward courage. The battle erupted. The Dominion charged, but Elias met them head-on. Each swing of the blade sent sheets of fire tearing through enemy lines, melting steel and shattering shields. The ground itself scorched where he walked. The Dominion faltered. What they saw was not a man, but a living inferno wrapped in human form. Their confidence broke. By midday, the enemy was in retreat, scattering in chaos across the valley. The Flameborne had expected defeat. Instead, they found victory, carried on the shoulders of the one they had once feared most. The Hand of Ash. The battlefield lay in silence once more, though this time it was not ruined but triumph that lingered in the air. The enemy had fled, their banners abandoned, their soldiers scattered like ash in the wind. The Flameborne stood among the wreckage in stunned quiet, their gazes fixed on the human who had carried them through fire and death. Elias lowered the sword, his arm trembling from exhaustion. His hand was blistered and charred, the burns deep, but he refused to let go until the last enemy was gone. Only then did he drive the blade into the blackened earth, where it stood upright, runes glowing faintly like a heartbeat. Lady Sarathiel approached, her armor cracked and scorched, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, she simply studied him, the stranger who had become the center of every fear and hope. Then, slowly, she bowed her head. "The Flameborne once worshipped the fire but feared its judgment," she said. "You have endured what none of us could, not as conqueror, but as shield. For that, you are the Hand of Ash." One by one, her warriors followed, lowering themselves in reverence. Their terror had become loyalty. Elias looked at them, weary eyes shadowed by pain. "I never asked for this burden," he murmured. "But if I must carry it, I will carry it as protector, not master." The firelight caught the edges of his scars, and for the first time, the Flameborne saw not a cursed outsider, but the figure their legends had promised. And so the human who tried only to return a sword became something greater, hope forged in fire, a living reminder that endurance itself could burn brighter than fear.